Okay, good morning, everyone, and welcome to our Supporting Our Towards LGBTQIA Community at George Brown keynote presented by Dr. Andrew Campbell. And before we begin, I would like to do our traditional land acknowledgement. George Brown College is located on the traditional territory of the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation and other Indigenous people who have lived here over time. We are grateful to share this land as treaty people who learn, work, and live in the community with each other. And I will also like to share the Black Futures Land Acknowledgement that we used during Black Futures Month. And given that this is a joint initiative, it is important to highlight the net connection there as well. And so here at Black Futures, we acknowledge over 4 centuries of the presence of peoples of African descent on Turtle Island, Canada, and the contributions they have made to enrich this land. We acknowledge the collective trauma caused by the legacy of the transatlantic slave trade, imperialism, and colonial conquest that was rooted in white supremacy and is responsible for uprooting millions of Indigenous Africans from their homelands and displacing millions more across the Caribbean, North America, and beyond. We stand in solidarity with the Indigenous people of Turtle Island to disrupt and dismantle the systems of oppression and reach towards truth, healing, abiding respectful relations, justice, and reconciliation. We also stand in solidarity to disrupt and dismantle the systems of oppression that injure and disrupt the lives of people of African descent. And so with that being said, I am honored to introduce the team to Dr. Andrew Campbell, also known as Dr. ABC. Dr. Andrew Campbell is an assistant professor in leadership for racial justice in education and the teaching and learning coordinator for the Master of Teaching program at the University of Toronto. Within the OISE community, Dr. Campbell is renowned for his leadership in advancing anti-discrimination work in teacher education, earning him the prestigious 2022 award for excellence in initial teacher education. Beyond his professional accomplishments, Dr. Andrew Campbell has a genuine love for people, food, fashion, and travel, and enjoys uniting his community over a good meal. And so with that being said, it's a great honor to welcome him to our ORIS team, and I hope this marks the beginning of one of many valuable conversations and initiatives.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Good morning. Good morning. Good morning. We are here and I'm excited for the conversation. Thank you so much. I'll share my screen in a minute. But thank you so much. What I love, first of all, there's a couple of things that I use my red marker. So when I use my red marker, I'm serious. Okay. So there are a couple of things that I want to underline before we get into while we are into the meat of the matter. Because the meat of the matter already started when you introduce yourselves. You know, sometimes we forget that the conversation started from even the introduction. The land acknowledgement is part of the conversation. The African acknowledgement is part of the conversation. When you say who you are, oh, I feel my energy already shifted and it's 2 seconds into the talk. But when you said who you are, when you tell me your title, your role, that conversation already started. Why are you here? Are you here to listen? It's a cute keynote. Are you here because it's a part of your schedule? You meet at 10 o'clock on a Monday. Are you here because if you don't come, then Mary may say, well, maybe Erin is absent. Are you here because you don't want to be missed in? Or are you here because you want to be present? That is not in my notes, but my energy is going there. And with that being said, when you show up in your titles, you know, when you show up in your titles, what does that mean? So everybody introduced themselves this morning, and every one of you, including myself as a guest speaker, we have a title. But how do we walk in our title? I didn't say work. I didn't say work. How do we walk in our title? Because we can work in our title. That's our job description. We get the thing of all the things we're supposed to do, what time we're supposed to be at work, which document we're supposed to be a part of, when we're supposed to do what we're supposed to do, what the reporting looks like in equity EDI work, anti-Black racism work, anti-homophobia work, whatever it is. We get that. We are very good at our research. We can go research, we can define, we can explain. But how do we walk in the work? Who are you behind the title? I don't want to spoil the morning, but I have to go there. There are racist people doing anti-racist work. There are homophobic people doing towards LGBTQ work. Yes, they are. Yes, they are. Why? Because it's a title. It's a job. It's a position. And the time we are right now, everybody wants a position and a title that says you're doing something to serve, because that looks good on your resume. Absolutely, rightfully so, you need it. But are we moving beyond our resumes? There's a lot of people who are doing equity work and EDI work. And you know what? It's just for the resume. And that is why there's a rumor going around that EDI is dead. Oh, I'm going to make a whole post on this soon. Because the people who are saying EDI is dead are the murderers, the killers, the white supremacists, the box checkers, the performers. Because now you have checked the box. Now you have performed equity. You want to move on. So it's good to spread a rumor that EDI is dead. You get me? So the second thing I want to talk about is the fact that when I logged on just now, you had the same cover that you had when I was supposed to be here, the 13th and the 15th. And I love that. I love that it was not changed. I love that it stays there because it's a reminder that we have work to do. Don't you ever feel funny about what never happened? It never happened. We get it. And that can be PR, that could be marketing, it could be that so much things was going on, it could be we are overwhelmed because of Black History Month, it could be the Black people are like, you know what, I really don't care to be talking about nothing Black history in February. Find another month to talk about it. There's a myriad of reasons why. Here is the good news. You are intentional about the work and getting it done. You didn't back down. I heard you, Mary, when you said, maybe we're going to start the conversation here with the keynote and we'll continue working. So for those of you who are here, I want to say thank you. I actually want to say big up because you have adjusted the sails to get you where you want to go. You see, the issue with a lot of us doing equity work is that it is so programmed. This is what is in the schedule. This is what is paid for. This is what must be done. And once the real life of EDI clicks in, we get scared because EDI doesn't go as how we want it to go. The step 1, step 2, step 3, step 4, step 5. It doesn't work like that. Sometimes you reach step 6 and something happens on campus and you're right back to step 1. Sometimes you reach step 8 and there is an issue out there in a political arena and we're right back to step 1. I can tell you, I just come off the heels of 2 major 2S LGBTQIA+ conferences, and the conversations are around supporting, establishing, standing firm, advocating, representing, showing up. These are not new conversations. I have had those conversations 5 years ago. I've had those conversations 10 years ago. But there are some things that have raised their ugly heads in the last month. And so we need to have those conversations again. So I want you to remember, this is the work. This is the work. And it's going to demand of you and I to work and walk in our title. Make a note of that. It's going to demand of me and Anna and Sarah and Rhoda and Yin to work and walk in our title. And when I say walk in our title, it's about our heart. When you think about supporting our 2S LGBTQIA+ community, it's about the weight. I did use that word very, very carefully. It's about the weight that you are going to have to carry in this work. So when I want to repeat that, when I use the phrase or when you have the topic supporting our 2S LGBTQIA+ community, it is about the ways in which we are going to work and walk to do that. And it is extremely about the weight you are committing to carry in this work. It is not easy work. It is not cute work. Some of us, because we do the work so well and so often, we make it look easy and cute. But it is not. I remember the first time I saw a typist. I will never forget. Some of you don't even know who a typist is because we don't have those job titles anymore. But I remember back in the 1990s, you go for an interview and they say 60 words per minute, and you see a typist do like this, and you go, wow. And you just see a piece of paper just out. You don't know the level of work and skill and focus and concentration that it takes a typist to be able to type 60 words per minute. Because in those days when we were hiring typists, most people are typing at 45 words per minute. So when you see someone doing excellent at something, when it comes to allyship and advocacy and being a co-conspirator and just doing the work, always remember that that person is carrying a level of weight, and that person is doing a level of precision to get the work done, aka supporting. Right? So we want to get into that conversation, what it looks like to support. So I'm going to share my screen, and I hope everything works. Please jump in if you're not hearing what you need to hear, and let me know. So I'm going to share, I think I'm going to share my full screen because I want to share certain things with you first. So I think it's screen. Yes, wonderful. Can you see my YouTube page? Wonderful. So that's
Yes.
good. We're in business then. So let me just share certain things with you. We're going to go through some of this. Let's just do of course, there's advertisement. Don't worry about that. That's how it works.
I can't hear.
You can hear the sound. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. I think I know what it is. I'm not sharing I normally would do stop sharing. I normally would do this on Zoom. I'm a Zoom specialist. Include sound. I found it. Include sound. We're good. We're in business.
But the changes, which
Can you hear?
not exactly clear.
The volume is very
Seems to
low.
be an awful lot of
It's coming up.
confusion around it at this point. There's discrepancies between what Minister Bill Hogan said in his press conference today and what's actually in the policy.
To understand the changes and the controversy, it's important to understand the policy to begin with.
So that's the first one. I'm going to move on. Can you see the second screen change, Mary? Wonderful. Let's go.
Visit to Ottawa. Danielle Smith is here to open a new provincial office as she battles the federal government on multiple issues. Her gender identity policy could be the newest front in that fight.
What she has proposed to ban young LGBTQ2 kids from being who they are puts lives at risk. And the decision to come out to one's family does not belong to a teacher, a school. It definitely does not belong to a premier. That is a person's decision alone. I hope we don't get to a court challenge, but we're going to look at every single option. And it's really important that Albertans...
Good. I'm going to move on. I'm just doing it for a reason. Just bear with me.
To add new social conservative policies to the party playbook. Two of those policies concern gender and trans issues. Nearly 70% of party delegates voted for a motion that states minors should be prohibited from gender-affirming care. Or as the motion puts it, life-altering medicinal...
All right, we're moving on.
Tonight about the rising tide of hate in this country faced by queer and trans Black Canadians. A summit in Ottawa this weekend gave people a place to gather and call for the creation of a national organization to help support the community. CTV's Colton Prale reports.
As a Black queer woman, Shelly-Ann Skinner understands discrimination.
Like burning a pride flag and calling me the N-word and calling me the B-word.
An outspoken activist in Barrie, Ontario, she says the attacks came to a head when she ran for city council in 2018.
I experienced an incredible amount of hate. Like phone calls, messages, emails, threats to my life, threats to the life of my children.
According to a new study, 70% of Black LGBT...
Okay, so I stopped there. I did that on purpose because I know it was a little bit low. In Zoom, it normally comes up, so I did it right. Anyway, we move on. I did it on purpose because I wanted you to see what's going on. And every video I selected, I want you to realize it's Canadian. I did not put anything American there because I don't want us to get into the thing of saying, well, it's happening in America and not here. You know, when we get into, when we having, I know you have had many of these conversations, but when we had the anti-Black racism conversation, there were many times that people would be interrupted to say, well, that is America. And then people like myself who are into the work had to skillfully show you all the racism that happened in Canada. And I have no problem in listing and showing you all what was happening. So the same thing with 2S LGBTQIA plus issues. We are seeing it again. We're seeing what's going on in Saskatoon. We're seeing what's going on so much around the spaces and the places that you and I occupy. And so I want us to have this conversation, right? I want us to have this conversation about what is going on and how we can intentionally support our 2S LGBTQIA plus community. And what does that support looks like? Can you see my slide, Mary? Wonderful. And what that support looks like for us. And so my first thing on my slide comes to us from a professor at Queens, Professor Lee Arthur. I was just talking about, that was a slide, just talking about 26 years ago. I want to give you context. All that we are having these very conversations, they happened before, they have happened before, they have happened before. So 26 years ago, the Supreme Court ruled that the Alberta government could not allow discrimination on the basis of sexual orientation. This changed many Albertans' lives. Yes, the Conservative provincial government could have used the notwithstanding clause. Yes, gay and lesbian Albertans could have continued to be legally open to discrimination right up to this day, but they weren't. But so, the writers in the Edmonton Journal says, for the first time in history, members of the Alberta's 2S LGBTQI plus community were protected from being fired, thrown out of their apartments, or denied access to healthcare solely because of their sexual orientation. They were able to emerge from the closet and live their true life. Alberta became a more just society. Today, 26 years now, the notwithstanding clause has already been used. You got it? I think you got it, Mary. I want you to realize when we say we are here to do the work, we have to understand, number one, the work is not new. But we have to understand that we have to use different tools and new ideas to support. And what does support look like? So you and I may not be outside doing the march. You and I may not be outside in the streets writing the policies. We may not be showing up at the legal and the government and but you and I, listen me carefully. You and I are living and working among and with 2S LGBTQIA plus individuals. You and I, our responsibility is to create a more just George Brown. You and I, our responsibility is to make sure the space we occupy that is called George Brown is a more inclusive space. It's a safer space. But before it becomes even safer, it has to be a braver space. That's why we are having these brave conversations. It has to be a place where the culture and the climate says to 2S LGBTQI plus people, you belong here. What does that look like? So I put back this slide here and I leave the date. So it's funny, we're working on the same level this morning. When I saw your banner, I smiled because in my package, what I did, if you notice, I did today's date, fix it up, but I went back to the original conversation we were supposed to have. And I want you to look at the original conversation. It says considerations for belonging, racial justice, and joy. We are here to talk about supporting all our 2S LGBTQIA plus persons, because when we do the support work, it creates belonging. We are seeing racial justice because, of course, many of our 2S people are Black, they're racialized, and they're two-spirited, they're Indigenous. And I want you to be intentional about that, because within the community of 2S LGBTQIA+, there are also some things happening when it comes to discrimination, because whiteness is always dominant, and whiteness takes over the voice, the space, and everything cannot be and is not about whiteness. I do not walk in a white body. I am a black gay man. And my intersections, those considerations for me and my intersections, my journey, my challenges, my identity, my fear, what belonging look like for me is going to be different. As an immigrant to LGBTQIA plus George Brown student who is in Canada for the first year, coming from continental Africa, let me make this very clear. The things that you have, just think this umbrella is going to be for every 2S LGBTQIA plus. I want you to reconsider. I want you to reconsider what out looks like for a young man who just come off the plane coming to George Brown from continental Africa. I want you to look like what it looks like September coming for your immigrant students who are coming from Ghana or Uganda. Anybody get where I'm going with this? I want you to understand what it looks like for a two-spirited individual coming to George Brown for the first time, coming from their indigenous community to Toronto for the first time. It is not the same. I want that to register with the team. But I know it's already registered. How do I know that, Dr. ABC? Because when you invited me, you were very specific. You were very intentional, and you wanted to talk about Black 2S LGBTQIA+. So I understand that you understand. I understand that you understand. But let's take it a little bit closer. So I was in Ottawa this past weekend. Some of you may know about it because you see it on LinkedIn a lot. Some of you may not. It came on CBC News. Some of you may not. But for the first time in Canada, we had a gathering of Black 2S LGBTQIA+ individuals in Ottawa under the auspices of the Enchante Network. You can Google them, you can look on their website, to launch for the first time a national Black 2S LGBTQIA+ group network. I want to give you some context. I was in Ottawa last year, September. I was invited by the Enchante Network. I was one of the hosts and the speakers for the big conference. It was almost 400 2S LGBTQIA+ people from all over. You name a group, they were present. Pride at Work, Pride Toronto, Manitoba, Alberta, you name it, they were there. But this was a national conversation for all of us. What the Enchante Network did, that I realized that there are people there who gets it, like you here at George Brown, who wanted to have this conversation on the 13th and the 15th. They said we need a specific conversation for Black 2S LGBTQIA+. And so I was invited back to Ottawa. But this time, the room was filled with just Black people. The Back to Our Roots survey showed that 70% of 2S LGBTQIA+ Black people experience hate crimes. I want this number to stay on the screen for you to understand why your support is needed. Your work is so necessary. So if you ever come to work one day, you feel like, you know what, I don't really feel like, you know, I'm useful here, because some of us, we go through that phase every now and then. I want you to realize you are useful. Your work is intentional. Your need for you to show up, advocate, be an ally, do the work is important. And I'm going to say something very important. I want you all to lean into the laptop. I need you to lean in. And I'm glad you're recording this, Mary, so you can share it with your people, whatever, share it with whoever. It's all good. I'm good. You have my permission. And for those of you who are listening to me, whether you're part of the team, you're a student, you're a professor, I want you to realize supporting 2S LGBTQIA+ individuals look different for different people. Don't you walk out of here thinking that I need you to show up at Pride with your LGBTQ flag and wave LGBTQ life matters. That's one way. There are many ways to support. So I want you to be intentional about the ways you support, the ways you create belonging, the ways you create safer spaces, the way you show up, the way you speak up, the way you stand up, the policies you support, the ways you create space and the campus, the ways in which your curriculum your curriculum includes representation of 2S LGBTQIA+ individuals, the ways in which you show love, care, and empathy, the ways in which you hold space, the ways in which the universe, the college have created intentional affinity spaces and allow them to be supported. Because here's an issue. Everybody likes to create these Black affinity spaces, the BCA, the LGBTQ, whatever. And then when you go to these spaces, you realize there's a lack of support. I want to repeat that. I want you to understand there are many ways to do the support, but something I want to underline is the need for these affinity spaces for your Black students and your 2S LGBTQI students and your immigrant students and your Asian students and your other racialized group. These affinity spaces are extremely important for people to just live and breathe and become and be in a space where they can thrive and laugh and throw back their heads and just be in that space. The problem we are having with many institutions is that, yes, you are excited when Black people create affinity spaces, and you're excited when 2S LGBTQIA+ people create these affinity spaces. The problem we are having is when we look into some of these spaces, it is lacking the institutional support. Ask yourself, what is the institutional support that I need to be given to the affinity spaces? When racialized folks and 2S LGBTQI+ folks create these spaces, ask yourself as an institution, ask yourself as a group of power and access, ask yourself when a group that walks in powerful titles and you have access to spaces and voices and places and resources, ask yourself, what are we doing to support these affinity spaces? Because I can tell you, I have seen a lot of affinity spaces established by students, but I do not see the support. I have been asked to speak in so many of these affinity spaces, and the first thing they say to me, Dr. ABC, we don't have any money. Oh, I'm going to get into it because I'm here to get into it. And you have to have that conversation with them. But the conversation shouldn't be with them. The conversation should be with you, the persons who sit in power and position, to say to you, when you have these affinity spaces, what are you investing and supporting? What does that look like? So now we have these affinity spaces, and what we're doing is giving them the crumbs. And so they want this work to be done, but what they have is the crumbs. Ask yourself, what are we doing as institutions to support these groups? When we say support 2S LGBTQIA+, what does that look like? What does that look like in tangible methods and means? I am not talking about your statements, because none of us, we are short on statements. I'm not talking about your pledge. We are over pledged by now. I'm not talking about your agreement. We are full of signatures. Check the Truth and Reconciliation, you realize we do have all the ideas. We're just not executing it. Check all the promises we made in 2020 because of George Floyd and all the different, Black powerful conversations we have had. Ask from that to-do list, how many things have been done? So when we say support, that is why I leave this here on this board for a while. I want you to understand that that our 2S LGBTQIA+ individuals deserve undeniable safety, informed community spaces, and prosperous futures. I'm going to read that statement again. Black 2S LGBTQIA+, all 2S LGBTQIA+ individuals deserve undeniable safety, informed community spaces, and prosperous futures. And that is taken from the website of the Enchante Network. At George Brown here, what does that safety look like? What is that community space like? And what does prosperous future look like in tangible terms? What does that thriving look like in tangible terms? I put my journey here for a reason, because I want to tell you stories about my own journey. I want to tell you that you're looking at someone who grew up in Jamaica. When I say bullying in school, I am not talking about being just called a name and tease. I'm talking about physical. I'm talking about you looking at someone who would come to school late many times. Late, not because I'm a late person. I'm very punctual. I'm A-type personality. But I'm late, Mary. I am late because I'm at the bus stop and the boys are all at the bus stop and the bullying and the teasing and the physical things are happening. And I just need the crowd to go. So let them go on the early bus and I will stay back till the crowd kind of subside a little bit. So my lateness at school is protection. The fear I lived in, fear in church, fear in my community, the very community I grew up in. I want you to know, in my book, when you get a copy of my book, you need to get a copy of my book, The Invisible Student in the Jamaican Classroom. I want you to understand, I share about the fear in my own community. I told a truth that I kept for years, that I left my community at the age of 21 to live on my own in a place that was 3 times the cost of my original rent, because I was threatened by neighbors about my sexual orientation. So nobody has to tell me foolishness about what's going on in Uganda and Ghana and around other parts of the world, what's going on when it comes to fear. I, Andrew Campbell, aka Dr. ABC, I know what that fear looks like and feel like. I know what belonging looks like and feel like when you're in a school and a church that you do not feel an ounce of belonging, but you have to show up 5 days a week. I know what those intersectionality look like. And so when we talk about supporting our 2S LGBTQIA+ spaces here at George Brown, we are talking about how do we resist, support, and heal. So make a note of that, team. That supporting is also about resisting. Supporting is also about the healing. I want you to make a note of that. When we talk, I really want you to make a note of that. That when we talk about supporting 2S LGBTQIA+, I want you to remember that that support starts with resisting. You cannot only show up for the good times and the celebration. Pride, pride is not just a good time in June. The work, and you can see it right now. I have a I would say a front line or a front seat view to what's going on in the 2S LGBTQIA+ community. And when it comes to support, we are in resisting mode as we speak. But while we are in resisting, we're also in creating community. While we're in resisting, we're also in healing mode. While we're in resisting, we are also have to be carving out the joy, the black joy mode. While we're in resisting, we are carving out the supporting and the safe spaces and the brave spaces. While we're in resisting, we are carving out the LGBTQ queer joy. So it's intersectional realities that is necessary. And I want you to understand that. I'm going to share something very powerful with you when you think of your 2S LGBTQIA+, especially your students who are racialized. This comes to us from Gloria Ladson-Billings. And this is why your support as a team is so necessary. And this is why I respected and appreciate when you called on me to do the 2 talks. And I hope you realize I am still open to do those 2 talks because it needs to happen. So we have to go back to the drawing board and ask ourselves, how do we get community? Maybe it's an evening, 6 o'clock after school. Maybe it's a different time. But we have to think about it, because when you come to racialized folks, Gloria Ladson-Billings says we enter the society raised. We come to school raised. And before I read this, let me just say something here. Because I'm looking at the team and I'm seeing the racialized bodies on this very team. Don't you think for 1 minute that I'm not aware that separate apart from the 2S LGBTQI conversations you and I are having at this time, there are conversations about racism. There's conversation about anti-Semitism. There's conversation about Islamophobia. There's conversations about gender. There's conversation about the many inequities. There are conversations about disabilities. There's conversations about so many things. But I also note that we have to be strong about inclusion, EDI, racial justice. So Gloria Ladson-Billings says, we enter the society race, we come to school race, we apply for jobs race, we enter the marketplace race. We can never leave our race at home or on a shelf. And so because we are plagued by the social construct, we have to find ways to live our lives and participate in society with one aspect of our identity that it seems to enter the room before we do. What does that look like? The navigating. So let's get into the support deeper conversation. I don't know how many of you know this slide. I have a funny feeling many of you do. May the 17th, Ida Hut, right? The International Day Against Homophobia, Transphobia, and Biphobia. This you're looking at, for me, is a powerful slide, team. And this is 2020. So you're looking at May the 17th, 2020, in the middle of pandemic, in the middle of a shutdown. I want to take you back to this 2020, COVID. And I want you to understand that 2S LGBTQIA+ students who are now, I'm going to use a very powerful word, get ready for my word, who are now trapped in their homes because of COVID. The research is out there of the number of homophobia, the hurt, the trauma, the pain that a lot of the homelessness during COVID. When everybody was locked home, there are so many 2S LGBTQIA+ individuals who were now homeless. They are living on the street because they did not have the shield of going to school and colleges and work every day out of the home. They are now in the home, locked up with individuals. And this was when many people realizing that I am not as respected as I thought I was. I'm not as cared for as I thought I was. I am not as liked as I thought I was. I'm not as appreciated. I'm not as loved. I do not feel a sense of belonging that I thought. And remember, I'm going to say something as powerful, Mary. School was the safest space for many 2S LGBTQIA+. So that is why your spaces here at George Brown is so important. I can tell you, if you don't know, let me tell you how powerful and important it is that you have safe spaces. I was at St. Francis Xavier University, certain university in Halifax. I visited there as a visiting professor for a week. And at that week, I was doing leadership. I was there for a week talking to student leaders. And they brought me around the student spaces. And I will never forget how impressed I was when they took me to the affinity spaces for students, physical spaces they created. They said, this is the lounge. It's a Black student lounge. This is an area for our 2S LGBTQIA+. And I will never forget when I walked into that 2S LGBTQIA+, and I said, God, this feels like a home. And they smiled. They said, that is the intention. You could see the spaces. And I said, what they do here? And she said, everything and nothing. And that was powerful because you saw the student just lounging. Somebody's in a corner doing their homework. Somebody over there eating their lunch. Outside, somebody's talking. She said, this is just their space. And she said to me, you'd be surprised how many people just turn this into their study area. They go to the library, grab their books, but they come right here. Because this way they get to just sit and be. And nobody, they know to explain nothing. Or, I remember, you see my nails I'm wearing. And I remember, Mary, years ago, if I would do this, in certain space, I would kind of, bend my fingers a certain way. Right? How powerful this is just to talk to you with my fingers like this, relaxed. Simple things when it comes to support. So this was a theme for 2020. And it says breaking the silence. So I want us to realize right now, this is why I use this slide today. Right now, our 2S LGBTQIA+ community is being forced into silence. I can tell there are many LGBTQ students, because what's going on in Canada and in Alberta and other places, they are like, it's dangerous times. I don't want to, whatever. I know friends I have in Ghana, because I visited Ghana twice. I hope to go back this year, who are just physically silent, scared. The silence is the only safety they have. Silence is safety because of the fear of families and workplaces and religion and customs and expectations and the fear of shame. So how are we supporting? So I'm going to show you a statement that I want you to keep. You can take pictures of my slide, write anything down, that's your thing. How are we doing the support? So I want to use a phrase from this very 2020 campaign. And it says, we examine the many ways we can and must tell our stories, claim space, establish our voices, and ensure we are heard. We break the silence and tell our truths. How, as George Brown, are we allowing our students to tell our stories? And our staff members, let's not forget our 2S LGBTQIA+ staff. Are they able to live their stories? Are they able to live their stories, live their truths? I'm sure you must recognize who is on the screen. If you don't, these are the Amazing Race winners a couple of years ago. One is a professor, an educator thing. The other one is a medical doctor. I had the privilege of being at a Indigenous retreat that I was invited to. And they both were the keynote speakers. And it would break your heart, but not surprise for me. The stories, especially shared by the medical doctor, of how they would go into a room right here in Canada, and the person would say, I need a real doctor, not you. And those are not new stories. Black doctors have those stories. Other racialized immigrant doctors have the same stories. So when we are talking about supporting, as I said before, we have to be resisting to understand the value of supporting. We have to speak up. As a team, we have to have the moral courage to say, this is wrong. We have to call out. A lot of us, and I know this is going to be a strong point for some people who can't handle it. A lot of us, we are into crafting this new narrative of like, oh my God, we need to make sure we call in people. It's so important we call in people. Let me make this very clear. Calling in is absolutely major, but calling out is necessary as well. And the idea that somebody in EDI has crafted that we shouldn't be calling out, we should only be calling it, that's foolishness. Oh, I said it. Is this recording? Yes, it is. Foolishness. We have to call out so we can call in. And I'm telling you that. The idea that we want to craft ways of telling people to be better without saying to them, you have done wrong, is a joke. We have to say to people, that was homophobic, that was transphobic, that was not exclusionary, that was a mistake, that was rude, that was not empathetic, that was hateful, that was bullying, that was nasty. That word was condescending. That was you robbed that person of their dignity. You need to ensure that this is important in the work. No, I don't mean you're going to embarrass them necessarily. I don't mean you're going to do the housewife of New Jersey and flip the table. Like I like a good table flip, but you don't need to flip the table all the time. You can pull them aside. I have done a lot of pull aside. I have done a lot of pull aside, and maybe that's why people some people are scared when they see me, because they think I'm always going to go on fire. I'm always on fire because we need burning. But I know I have as much stories to tell you of how I pulled somebody aside in private and said, you know, we can't be doing that. I have many stories to tell you how I have restored people in meekness and in love. I can tell you stories of how I have spoken to a Karen. A Karen pulled her aside and said, hey, Karen, you are Karening. And we are going to fix this. And that Karen and I, we have had brunch. We have had lunch. And we have had conversations. Because I want that Karen to know you could be a better person. So don't tell me foolishness about calling out. I know what calling in is. I have called in hundreds of times. But calling out is necessary, telling our stories. Claim space. What does claim space look like? This is a big one for you, your team. But here's a magic question. Do our 2S LGBTQIA plus individuals at George Brown need to be claiming spaces constantly? Or are we creating space? Oops, oops, oops. Do we need to put the burden on our community? Right? Do we need? That's something we need to really ask ourselves, right? Do we need to put the burden on the 2S LGBTQ community to constantly claiming space? Or we as an organization is going to say, yeah, I am creating space for you. I am cleaning up space for you. I am creating climate for you. I am being intentional with how I am creating safer space and braver space for you. Or we're going to just sit back, fold our hands, and allow the racialized, the oppressed, the hurting to constantly claiming space. Imagine a world where the oppressed don't have to be claiming space because the power and the privilege have created the space. Let that sink in a little bit. Give it a little minute to sink in. And so I want you to understand that is why you are here. That is what your support looks like. Establish our voices. I'm going to tell you about these pictures. I hope you're taking note of my pictures, how intentional they are. I think you have already done that. How intentional they are. I want to tell you about this picture for a minute. I was invited to speak at a university. And when they called me to speak, they say, Dr. ABC, I just want you to know that someone spoke a couple weeks. And when they talk about the intersection of queerness and Muslim and religion, there was a big backlash. And so we just want you to know. I was like, okay, I showed up. Because I don't know who is going to give me the backlash when I tell you the truth. Because if you think I am going to allow any religion, and remember I am Christian, Oh, I could tell you stories. Read my book and you'll get stories about me and church. So don't give me foolishness that there are no gay Christian and there are no gay Muslim and there are no gay Indian. Don't give me that garbage. Take that garbage to someone else who hasn't lived within the LGBTQ community, who don't know the truth and the stories. Don't come to me with that. And so what I did was to push back and establish our voices, because what that particular institution, what happened at the event was that the speakers had erased and stifled the voices of queer Muslim students. And so I'm showing you on RuPaul Drag Race and on the right, Mango Lassie, who is a Canadian drag queen. So on the left is RuPaul Drag Race. Jackie Cox, you can find that online. Both are Muslim men. And on the right, it is Mango Lassie, a Canadian drag queen. Their existence is an act of resistance. I want you to know that. But I want you to also know that there are tons of your students who will never maybe feel safe enough to come out. But they will also use spaces if you create it for them to use. Ensure we are heard. What does that look like in your support journey? For those who don't know what this is when Black Lives Matter shut down Toronto Pride, because their voices needed to be heard. For too long, Black West LGBTQIA+ felt like they were not a part. So there are many ways for you to allow voices to be heard. Who is on your boards? Are they on your committees? Are they on your panels? Are they in your classrooms? If you know what it feels like for many students to come to OISE and Seneca, when I used to teach at Seneca and Queens and Niagara and TDSB, I've been at Durham College, I've taught a lot of places, University of the West Indies. If you know what it is for them to realize that their professor is gay and living his best life, I have inspired tons of students publicly and a whole lot privately who are too afraid. And they say, Dr. ABC, I just want you to know I am gay as well. But I live in this country and I live in this place and I am your student, but I this and I am married and I am a father and this and that and all the kind of stuff. That is why it's important, because many of our people are not living their best lives. And so they cannot tell their truth. Belluk says sometimes people try to destroy you precisely because they recognize your power, not because they don't see it, because they see it and they don't want it to exist. I know my power. I walk in my power. I have discovered who I am as a Black immigrant, queer, gay man with a beautiful Jamaican accent. I don't need to sound like anybody else except myself. I've been to I've done tons of equity workshop, and we talk about accent and the ways in which people have looked at many immigrants in deficit because of your accent. The same immigrant who speaks 6 different languages. How dare you? How dare you think because this immigrant don't know one language, which is English, well, they are of less value. But this immigrant speaks 6 other languages. How dare you? We have to think about what support looks like. And support looks like telling the truths. Telling the truths. So we can show up for ourselves, but we need you listening to me, the professors, the student bodies, the leaders, the title holders, the team, to show up in support. so that too as LGBTQ people can live their stories. Telling your stories don't necessarily mean always opening your mouth, you know. I want to make sure I capture that in my little capturing that I do when I do my workshops. You know, I want you to realize telling your stories and telling your truth don't always mean your mouth open. It doesn't always mean your mouth have to open. I have to tell my story and tell my truth by just the way I show up. When they expect you to show up one way, you show up as your authentic self. When they think they have abused you and used you, and you're going to show up as your half self, you're going to show up as your peace self, you're going to show up as a percentage of yourself, you're going to show up as a part of yourself. You're all of a sudden, when they see you coming through the door, they go, OMG. Because all they could see is you showing up as your whole self. That is my truth. That is my story. I have troubled the waters many times when I show up as my whole self. I have purposely showed up as my whole self in black space that I know is full of homophobia. Because just showing up is a keynote in itself. A free keynote. That one is on the house. Me showing up as my whole self. That's a full keynote. How are we allowing individuals in our organizations, students in our classrooms, our neighbors, our workers, our friends, how are we allowing them, our family members, to show up as their whole self? Everyday people are negotiating with themselves. How much of me will I show up with today? I am so happy I no longer live that burden. But I know there are many people who are still living that burden. And I pray, I did say pray, I pray that people on a whole will be able to just show up as their whole self, because that peeling away is punishment. That hiding is harmful. That struggling is sad. There is no win when you cannot show up as your own self. And so in closing, what does belonging look like? That's a question I'm leaving with you. We don't need to answer that today. Today is not an answer that question day. Today is a think on the question kind of day. What does belonging look like? Can I tell you something, Mary? The most requested topic I got in 2023, the most requested keynote I got in 2023 was, Dr. ABC, can you talk about belonging? I have done some powerful keynotes on belonging. Not belonging for TWIS, LGBTQIA+, belonging, period. And 2023, I am getting same requests. So I know for a fact that people are not feeling a sense of belonging. I have the receipts, like Beyonce. I have the receipts, right? How are we showing up for our TWIS LGBTQIA+ community? How are you showing up? And I'm going to leave this with you quickly. And the question says, how are you showing up for our TWIS LGBTQIA+ community? And there are 3 simple words I put at the bottom there: affirmation, allyship, and actions. How are you showing up? See what I put first? Affirmations. The resistance is powerful, and the resistance is needed. But sometimes we get so caught up in the resisting, we forget the loving, we forget the affirmation, we forget the power of joy and community. I feel my energy shift every time I say that, because I live within the community. I know too well the power of affirmation, power of community, the power of joy, the power of what I call a sustained hug. I have been to so many places and spaces, and somebody said, "Hey, Dr. ABC," and I said, "Oh my God, can I get a hug?" And I said, "Yes," and we hug, and I hold them for a good 30, 20, sometimes 15 seconds. Ooh, and you feel it. It's a hug that says, "I see you." It's a hug that says, "I see you." That's all it says. I see you. People need affirmations. People need love. People need care. People need a smile. People need your joy to be watered and nurtured. And that's why for me, I'm not ever going away from my calling. I know what my calling is. You don't need to designate my calling. I know my calling. My calling goes way beyond theory. I love writing books and writing chapters, but my calling go way beyond the written word. My calling is in the living. My calling is in the living, the enacting, the doing, the showing up, the celebrating. My calling is in the turn up. I love a turn up. Being in community with others. That's where the power is. And so I asked you that question. How are you showing up? How are you doing that? And here is a powerful slide that I want to wrap up this session with. We are past the 1 hour mark. How are you disrupting performative allyship and leadership? How are you disrupting the performance? How are you disrupting the check boxes, the gatekeeping and the silence? How are you doing that? And I want to leave you with those powerful words that I just mentioned. Affirmation, allyship, and actions. As you go forward in your conversation, as you go forward in doing the work, as you go forward in building solidarity, as you go forward in being supporting, I want you to remember how powerful it is for you to show up with your affirmation. Show up with your, I'm going to say something. Show up with your bag of love. Show up with a big bag of love. When they see you and they say, "Mary, what you packing?" You said, "Oh, I'm going to this workshop over there. I'm packing my books. I'm packing my markers. I'm packing my slides. I'm packing my laptop. Oh, and I have a whole bag of love over here. That box, don't leave that box. That box is full of love." Pack that. Pack your allyship and pack your action, because we are thirsty for the actions. We are thirsty for the actions. So I really want to say thank you for having me in your space. Thank you for allowing me to share with you as I am called to share, as I know how to share, as is my calling, how to share. There are many people who are called, and they are called different ways. This is my calling. I speak to you from my heart. Prepare the work, but I full it of heart. I prepare my slide and I see. Anybody remember in COVID? Anybody remember in COVID, one of the popular picture, Erin, maybe you remember it, when the guy did this with the season, everybody was doing this, everybody was going in their kitchen. Anybody remember that? Yeah. You remember, it was all over social media in 2020 when there was season, you know. Yeah. I've seasoned. You have to season with love, everybody. And I want to say one more thing before you go for the recording. I want each of every one of you to acknowledge that the work you do is heavy lifting. That's what you do, you know. Don't think I'm unaware what you do. In this office, human rights and all this kind of stuff, you are heavy lifting. I know you walk out of your office, Anna, and Shelly Ann and Sarah. You walk out, Mary Claire, you walk out sometimes feeling like, ooh, it's heavy lifting. But you know what? Some of us, we can do this. And I think it's because we come with hearts. We don't come with paper. I see the people who come with paper, how much they struggle. If I come with paper alone, Mary, I wouldn't do this work. Because no, it's too much. But you come with heart. And so bring your heart. Continue to bring your heart. Continue to nurture your heart. Nurture that moral courage. Nurture that servant leadership. Nurture that advocacy leadership. Nurture that's showing up and showing out and speaking up and standing up. Nurture, that's all heart. And that when I said heart, I don't mean teddy bear cute. I don't mean pink Barbie doll cute. I mean heart. That the heart that one day you're going to speak so hard in front of the crowd, you just burst out crying. That's heart. That's not weakness. That's heart. Oh, no, don't you walk away thinking, oh, I'm sorry, Mary, that I felt I was weak. I didn't get, no, you weren't weak. You were powerful and you are full of heart, and heart push you to the tears, and the tears are going to push you to actions. I want to make sure I say that. The tears are going to push you to action, because we have seen a lot of tears. Oh, we saw a lot of tears. We like to cry at pink shirt. We love to cry at orange t-shirt. Oh, we know when to cry. Oh, we love to cry at certain events. But then we walk away with nothing afterwards. Our makeup may be smudged, but nothing else happens. We just smudged our makeup. Can we smudge something else other than the makeup? Can we smudge our action plan to make sure it gets done? So with that, I want to say thank you again. And everybody who will be listening to this video, you're going to listen to the video a month from now, 5 months from now, a year from now. You'll be surprised when you have recording like these, how powerful they are. Sometimes I've had messages from people far, far away and wide. And I said, Dr. Campbell, I just listened to this video and I was like, that video is 3 years old, but it just reached to them. And it just hit the right spot and the right amount of juice for them to feel like, wow, this is what I needed at this particular time. So thank you so much for having me. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
I think Mary's internet is acting up.
Yes,
but
yes.
Yes, Mary is frozen. Thank you so much, Dr. ABC. Thank you, thank you, thank you. I know that there are a lot of questions. I saw a couple of hands up. I think, Rhoda, you had your hand up first, but I also see Yin's hand. Rhoda, did you have a legacy hand or?
It was a legacy hand. I meant to applause and press the wrong button.
Fantastic. Thanks, Rhoda. Yin, I'll pass it off to you.
Unmuted. Okay, good. I'll lower my hand and I'm going to say, I want to say that the being from the disability community, learn a lot from the LGBTQAI+. For example, and I kind of wondered, like, anyways, just to strengthen that intersectionality. Yes. So, for example, in the LGBT, they talk about coming out. I'm thinking people with disabilities got to come out. We got to be able to be proud to say, I am disabled. I'm blind. I have mental health issues. I know there's stigmatization, but when we keep quiet, when we hide our identity, that identity of disability or however you want to call it, it really has the same effect of harming self, and also the society thinks that we don't exist. I really like how you talked about support, but I want to say that maybe I'm kind of, favoring, or like, it seems that when we talk about support for the LGBTQ or the racialized community, yes, we want to recognize and see them, but for the disability community, in order to give them that space, it creates more effort. So, for example, if you want them to have a voice, hey, hire, you have to recruit, pay for American Sign Language. You have to make sure your document is accessible. You have to make sure your video actually has captioning. That takes money and extra time. And sometimes sometimes I feel that in the other communities, you know, whether it's 2S LGBTQ or racialized or gender, they say, yeah, we understand, but same thing. Oh, it costs us money. It's too much work. How about next time? You know, I've joined meetings where I like they're showing a video and I just there's nothing because they just play music. That's how they created their music. So I think just that just as I'm not, I don't identify as 2S LGBTQ, but I want to make sure that in my events, we use pronouns, we give that space. But at the same time, I wish the other communities would have more understanding. And I love the way you say, claim the space. Do we just put the burden on people to claim their space or to create that space? Because oftentimes you say, well, if you want accessibility, put in an accommodation request. That means we always have to ask. Could you send documents in accessible? Accessible? Can you like we have to make those requests? If we don't make it, you don't do it. You know, never mind the facility, choosing the facilities. So I just like a lot of what you say really resonate, and I just want to say that it resonates with me because our community wants the same thing, and yet how can I put it in a language that people actually understand? That just as we want to create space, safe space, brave space for this community, how are we doing at the same time? And I love how you make that intersectionality between 2S and the Black community. And I want to add on that one more layer.
Absolutely.
That just call in people with disabilities to be part of your group.
Let me jump right in there. Let me jump right in there, Ian. This is absolutely so powerful. And I loved how you use all that time to explain that because it is important. It is very important. So I want to underline two things. And I love you use the magic word, intersectionality. So, you know, when you have a keynote like this for an hour, you can't touch every part. But when I talk about intersectionality, if you notice that slide I use, what I would do in a workshop normally, I would put those things on my own intersectionality. And then I would say to people, what are the others intersectionality? So there is a major intersectionality when it comes to Blackness, racialized, 2S LGBTQ, and disability. And actually, just so you know, there are people I know are doing the work. As a matter of fact, one Professor Adam Davies was doing some work on intersectionality behind with mental health and queerness. And so there are the intersectionality. What we have to do is, listen to me carefully, and I love how we're recording this. We have to not think about the competing demands, but how we get to do everything. You know, I always say to people, and I want you to listen to me carefully. I always say to people, when I say Black Lives Matter, that doesn't erase that all lives matter. What I'm doing at that particular time is highlighting a particular group that is under oppression that needs to be highlighted. Let me give you a perfect example of what that looks like. We're talking about immigration. We're talking about immigrants and homelessness. There's a whole lot of immigrant and homelessness on our TV since January, since November, if you remember. But I hope you realize every time you click on the television, those were the Black immigrants. And that's why the community came forward in December with that whole thing, because it was the racialized folks who were left on the street. People are asking, where are all the other refugees? We don't want to get into that today, but there were many other refugees who literally came off the plane to the hotel, come off the plane to homes. And they were these set of refugees who came off the plane to sleep on the street, and they were all racialized. So the intersections are something we need to talk about, but also how we support the intersectionality, like you said. So let me give you a good example. You said something important, Ian. You talk about the resources, and you talk about the burden of to always demanding the resources. I can tell you that you are absolutely correct. I remember I do community classes. So every now and then you see me post something on LinkedIn. You should follow me on LinkedIn. And I will have free lectures. They're for community free. Anybody can come. Your parents, your whole family, the whole department. I've had a whole group of teachers turn up to my community. They're free. They're online. And I remember one particular thing I was doing last year. And a lady online from LinkedIn who I know wrote me and she said, I have 3 deaf people who want to come to your thing. And it took me I went back to my university. It took me about 11 emails to get it done.
Yes.
It was so much work. Let me be frank with you. I either thought to myself, I can't do this again because it's too much work.
Yeah.
But if I do that, then I'm excluding a whole group of people who want to be a part of Dr. ABC free community class. So I said to the university, how are you going to put something in place that all I need to do is write one email and say, dear team, I am doing this. I need this at 8 o'clock for this, and it's done. It's intentional. Let me give you another example why I know you're correct, Yin, and I want to underline this conversation. And then we have to wrap up in a couple, two more seconds. That's okay. We don't have all day. I have done a lot of talks. And sometimes I will get a letter and it says, dear Dr. ABC, can you do whatever? And I said, yes. And we negotiate and we're done. And then I get an email that says, can we get a copy of your presentation 2 to 3 days before? Because we are using sign language. And I reply, yes. And I don't give copies of my presentation, but I must. I'm going to repeat that for the recording. I must. Because if I say no, I am saying I won't allow those people to be in my session. I have been to a place where they said, Dr. Campbell, here is a pin on mic for you to speak to everybody. And they pinned the mic on me. I'm being dramatic because I love drama. That's me, I love drama. They pinned the mic on me. And then they said, but we have people in the audience with a cochlear implant. And I said, well, I know what that is. And they said, well, you have to speak through this one. And I said, well, put it on me. And they put another thing on me. You could give me 15 of this. I'm not burdened down. I'm doing this for a reason. I am not burdened down. All I am doing with all of these wires is I am being accessible. I am making sure my work is accessible. But here is a problem. Sometimes we, the individual, we, the organization, we, the other people, think, well, this is all too much wire and too much effort and too much this and too much and too much and too much. And we stagger and stagnate the work. So thank you for your question about the intersectionality between the two LGBTQIA+ and disability. And then the last thing I'm going to say, because I have to go after this, I'm going to end with a good, juicy story for you, Yin. So about 7-8 years ago, I am downtown Toronto. I'm in the club. I'm in one of the gay club, and I'm living my best life because I always did my best life. Okay, my jeans is extra tight. My face is doing the most. I am having a good time because that's what you're supposed to do when you go out. Let me just give you a sidebar keynote. You do not leave your house and drive all the way to go to somewhere to not have live your best life. Stay in your house. Stay in your bed. Watch TV. So when I leave my house and people see me in the street and I said, Dr. ABC, you're doing the most. I said, if I wanted to do the least, I would stay home. Once I open the door, I am doing the most. That's a second keynote for you. Leave that for another time. Invite me back to talk about what it is to do the most. And as the gay children would say, the absolute most. Shelly and I see you laughing. You can laugh. Don't worry. We're here for it. But let me tell you something. So I was in the club lane. This is my story for you to close off. I am in the club. I am on the second floor of the club. It's an upstairs and downstairs. And we say, back home we say upstairs and downstairs. It's an upstairs and downstairs club. I'm on the top floor. It's 1 a.m. I am dancing up a storm. I look around and there's a person, a gay person in a wheelchair on the second floor. Now I saw them because this place has no elevator. I saw when they were lifting this person up the step in the wheelchair. So, but I'm not going to talk about the step on the wheelchair. I'm talking about the person being on the dance floor in the wheelchair. Mm-hmm. This happened to me twice, by the way, at a club and at Pride, Blackarama. And when I turned around and I saw the person in the wheelchair, on the dance floor, all I could think is, well, honey, if you come all the way up the step and you're on the dance floor, you are here to dance. I look at her, I said, may I have a dance? And she said, of course. I was on the wheelchair. I was doing the most. Listen, they were spinning the chair. I was spinning with the chair. I had the most fun. And I've done that twice. I tell you that story because we have to normalize. And people cannot be afraid and ashamed. Imagine how many other persons in a wheelchair who say to themselves, I don't think I have any right in a club. I'm in a wheelchair. So we have to normalize those intersections. And then this happened to me another time. I was at Pride Toronto, I think it's 2018, and I saw this other person in a wheelchair in Pride. And I went over and I said, listen, and they were playing some good dancehall music. We have to wind up yourself. You know, the young people who listen to this video, they will get it. We have to wind up yourself, some good dancehall music. Let me tell you something. I was winding on that wheelchair, you wouldn't believe it. Unapologetically, because that's joy. That's Black joy. That's inclusion joy. That's 2S LGBTQ joy. And as you said, that's disability joy. And we have to realize that we have the power to cultivate that and to sustain that and to support that. I think your question and your comment was absolutely powerful and beautiful. And I appreciate it. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Wonderful. Well, we have to leave the rest of the questions for when we come back. So I know we're coming back. So we'll be doing that. I think we're going to come back. You want workshop mode or whatever mode. I'm happy to show up in any mode because we have to continue being in conversations. The days of doing the one-stop shop and then think you have done the most is over. And that's a problem with so many organizations. They have done the one little thing, check the box and think, well, we are now supporting 2S LGBTQIA+. No, we have started a conversation and I trust and hope we'll continue, not necessarily with me alone, but with other voices, because there are many other voices that can be added to this conversation. So thank you so much for using my voice for today. And it's an honor and a privilege to be here. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Campbell. I will do a real round of applause because my reaction is not working. This was a great way to start the Monday, especially coming back from vacation. I needed this little boost to be like, oh, it's Monday again. But this was
come on Monday.
More. So thank you so much, and thank you, team, for coming. I'm sure we'll catch up again after lunch. And as Dr. Campbell said, we will be in touch on what we're doing next with the recording, sharing it, and moving into a workshop.
Have a wonderful day. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye, everyone.
Thank you.